It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. Good evening and hello and welcome to tonight's broadcast. We are here to finish the unfinished business. There's nothing worse than when you start covering a show and then you just don't do the last season, the probably the most important season. And it's been so long since I revisited that season. It's been a few months now. We're not going to go thing by thing. It's just too difficult. So this is going to be more of an overview. Very soon I'm going to be revealing the winners of the t-shirt giveaway. Okay, maybe that'll be its own dedicated thing. Also, just a heads up, John Christ interview that is coming. We have even more Patreon content coming. Keep your eyes peeled next Monday for the next installment of the secret show that we're currently doing. And lastly, October brings with it the beginning of 31 days of Halloween. We're going to do our 31 days of Halloween kickoff show. I didn't think I was going to be doing 31 days of Halloween again on YouTube because it's such a daunting amount of work. It's a real commitment, but I'm just weighing it out and thinking, how can I stop now? We have 60 reviews on the channel alone. Like, how cool would it be to have a minimum of 93 by the end of October? So hopefully that'll all go according to plan. So keep your eyes peeled for the kickoff show. That's probably going to be at the end of September. So September is all about not watching horror movies. It's about watching just TV and things, wrapping up stuff like The Sopranos. And coming back to discuss this final season is my very spicy friend, who you may remember from season 5. He is back to help me to deliberate on the conclusion of the Soprano saga. Without further ado, here is Spicy. Hey. Ooh.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Thanks for joining me tonight.
Good, and you?
Yeah, good. I am good. Pupsy.
Good, and you?
Yeah, right, Pupsy.
So having me on your show. Happy to be here. So
of course,
it's been a little while since we did season 5.
Now we just got to nail you down to do the rest of Family Matters, which will be its own. That's going to take forever. But
I'm waiting for the reboot. I'm waiting for them to reboot it so that we can get some hype behind it, and then maybe get some more viewership. But to be honest with you, I'm still kind of astounded at the viewership numbers we were getting. Kind of nuts.
For what?
The amount of views that we were getting both on Facebook and on YouTube for our very sort of impromptu. And I mean, I was on a 2012
that's right,
ThinkPad X1 Carbon with really awful quality and stuff. We had a lot of views.
Listen, but that was when things were so minuscule. It's going to be even bigger now. You have to watch it. Come on, watch season. What did you finish? Where did you leave off the season?
I want to say we did 3 episodes. We did part A of
season 1
season into halves, and we did a total of 3 halves. We made it halway into second season.
So come on, let's finish it up. We got to get to Bruce Lee Urkel. There
are so many better shows, though. What
do you mean? Do you want to see Carlsbad?
Well, actually, you're right. I can't do Boy Meets World because.
Oh, actually, I would love to do Boy Meets World.
Yeah, but we can't
because they already did a podcast.
Because they're doing one. I think Family.
Yeah, but I want to okay. How about this? Can we talk about just that little sliver of Boy Meets World when Harley comes on the show and it's all about Baboon and everything? That's what I would want to talk about.
Oh, season 2,
yeah. That's the shit right there.
That show used to get me feeling all types of, somewhere if this side of the spectrum, right? If this is horny. And this is emotional.
Yeah.
Somewhere
hormotional.
Yeah, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. The show didn't make me horny, all right. But something about the age I was probably 11.
Topanga made you horny.
Well, she still does, but that's not the point. the point
I
is,
never was into Topanga. I did
yeah,
not. I didn't never. I just right on my. Just not
yeah.
my thing. Not my thing.
It was just something about
I know what it was
this
about.
guy. What?
Not for YouTube consumption, but I know what it was.
I think it was something about this, like being a tween, right? Like being like 11, 12 years old and like having feelings for girls and
Yeah.
then like exploring that and like seeing Corey and Topanga sort of explore that on TV made me feel like I could identify with it. And it just like got me feeling some type of way.
There were three types of episodes, and then I'm going to digress because I really want to jump into this. There were three
Yes.
types of Boy Meets World episodes. There was Corey Loves Topanga episodes. There was Sean Hunter, Corey, I'm Not Like You, I'm Trailer Trash episodes. And then there was always like Eric is progressively getting stupider episodes. Those were like the
that was just peppered in, Eric. That was
yeah. That wasn't the focus. But really the focus was Sean saying, I'm not like you, I'm trailer trash, Corey, leave me alone.
They didn't have space for Eric as an actual character.
Right.
So they made him just this comic relief until later on when they had him and Matthew.
Sean had an older brother. They added that. That was the core four. Yeah, it was great.
All right. So let's move on.
Okay, so where are things? Okay, so real quick, just to paint a picture of where we left off in season 5. What's her face is dead. Freaking Adriana has died, which sends Chris into like, a secret spiral, of heartbreak. What's the other big thing that happens at the end of season 5? Oh, Tony gets whacked.
Tony kills Tony.
Tony kills Tony, which is huge. Nobody was expecting that.
He's hoping that will kind of, I mean, he knows that's not what they want, right? He knows that what they want is they want
to torture him. They want to torture him. Yeah.
And Tony thinks, listen, if I just do it myself, there's nothing they can really do about it. It's too late. They won't be able to torture him. And, they either have to, they'll accept it because they have to, because what's the option? The other option.
And now, and then the other thing too is,
and Phil's not,
Right. And what's interesting is Tony's death, Tony B's death is listen, there's no bearing the lead. There's no spoilers. Chris dies in this season. Tony's death foreshadows Christopher's death in the sense of you would never think that Tony in a million years could kill his cousin Tony B. And yet here he is pragmatically. He is he's doing what is pragmatically necessary. And now here he is doing the same with Chris. Now Chris has come close to brushes with death in the past, even at the hands of Tony, because everybody thought that Tony was, copping domes from Adriana, and Chris went crazy, and Tony put a gun in Chris's face. So it's like there was a little bit of precedent, but ultimately nobody thought when Christopher died, that was a shock. That was just absolutely appalling.
Well, well, here's a man who just likes to get right into it.
Yes.
All right, you want to go right?
Hold on. No. All right. We'll pull back a little bit. We'll start with this. How about this? One of Tony's guys wants out of the crew.
Oh, Eugene Pontecorvo.
I love that you know that name.
Yeah. Well, this is a tough episode to watch, man. And he is getting, from what I understand, he's someone who grew up with Tony, who's known Tony a long time, and he gets this opportunity to sort of leave it all behind, and he's got like
he inherits millions of dollars.
Yeah, and he has the opportunity to like sort of walk away from it all. And I mean, really, it's his wife pushing it on him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm sure he also wants it, but he's getting a lot of flack from his wife. And I think this goes to illustrate like that's just, Tony really is kind of thinking about it.
Yes.
Right. And so Eugene kind of like does some stuff. I think he does a hit or something like that. He's doing he's buying Tony a Rolex. He's doing whatever he can.
He's trying to appease and everywhere Silvio's going Hey, talk to Tony. Talk to Tony.
Yeah. Well, he wants to do it, and Tony, I think, wants to do it. And there's something that happens in that episode. I don't remember.
Well, here's the other thing that's
where Tony
interesting
kind of
too.
pulls an audible at the end and decides that he's not going to.
But here's
and
what
he doesn't even have the guts to really tell Eugene that.
Right. He's very.
He has Syl do it. He has Syl
Right.
just be like, yeah, about that thing. It's not going to happen. He's sort of like down.
No-go. Yeah, he does.
Right? Yeah, it's a no-go.
But here's what's interesting.
Like, with very little fanfare that he breaks the news to him. And I forget what it is, but Tony just like sort of decides, fuck it. I feel like there's something that happens to Tony in that episode where he's really going to do it. And then something happens and just decides, I don't really fucking care that much.
Well, here's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Here's what's interesting. And what does it say? It's kind of interesting how this is the beginning of the final season 2. It's the notion that like this life that they live, like it's like you're in until you die, and the goal of the life is that you get to live good. Like you live good while you're doing. Now, what happens when suddenly you an outside element, i.e. a large inheritance, gets introduced into the mix, and suddenly you don't need to go on collections or whack people or do whatever it is that you do in order to live that life, and you want out.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how the only way out for this guy was to unalive himself, in his mind, at least.
Yeah.
You know, he couldn't, there was no in between. He couldn't find a way to just live his life as a mob guy. You know, it was like, I have to find another way out.
And he kind of like speaks too soon, you know, like he tells his wife that it's kind of a done deal, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. And, you know, he's just caught in between kind of a rock and a hard place, and he takes what he thinks is the easy way out, you know. There's so much going on in season 6.
Yeah. Junior shoots Tony.
Yeah. Now,
because he's going senile.
He's He's got I mean, that's it, right? Because he already like had that episode, right, where he wandered off, and he's like, "Oh, I want to talk to Damiano."
It's slowly been developing.
Right?
It's been developing.
It's been developing, and there's the whole thing where he has the outburst about, "Oh, he never had the makings of a varsity athlete," and Tony thinks it's kind of BS and stuff, and it really kind of comes to a head where, and you could see it in the episode even before he like shoots him and stuff, like. Junior is just very sort of agitated. Great acting by the marvelous Dominic Chianese. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he really plays the dementia role very convincingly. I mean, so much of it's a thing that Chris does too. Like these things, like drug addiction or being senile, or like these things that are usually done in a very sort of caricatured way in TV and film. Yeah. They have this ability to have such great nuance and such great realism, and I think that's one of the things that sets apart. And it's the actors as well as the directors that I think really sets this series apart. I mean, so convincing that he is. He's got that short temper that is sort of characteristic of people with Alzheimer's. And, he just comes out of the blue and shoots him. And Tony's like trying to get the phone, and he pulls it down. I mean, such great performance from both of them in that scene. And then we get the whole weird Kevin Finnerty thing.
Well, now here's the weird thing. Here's the other interesting thing too. Generally, when someone is murdered on a show or shot or harmed in some way where they're near death but they don't die, it's a form of inoculation. If you almost die, then typically you're not going to die later on. It's not a hard lined rule.
Okay, so you're talking about Jon Snow getting stabbed, and then brought back to life. So he's not going to die in the Battle of the Bastards because he just got brought back to life two episodes ago.
Right. It generally almost death brings about plot armor. It doesn't always happen, but it brings plot armor. So Tony and what's interesting in The Sopranos is, and I guess we'll have to either get to it at some point or sooner than later. We could even address it right now. Ultimately, how one determines the what happens at the end of the series. It doesn't seem to be the case. Tony almost dies at the beginning, and in my opinion, he most certainly dies at the end. So
I think that there is a very convincing argument that he does at the end, like very convincing. However, it's not an out and out thing that you see with your own eyes, which leads to conjecture and people talking about it still to this day, debating it one way or the other, which is a lot better than
because no body, no death. That's the other rule of thumb. If you don't see somebody die, then they didn't actually die. However,
no, I don't know if that's true.
That is so true. And there's only one exception, and that's Stannis Baratheon, because we see him die off screen.
I don't subscribe to that. I don't even know what happens with Stannis in the show.
What are you talking about?
I don't know, man. He's still alive in the books, and he's in very, very different circumstances. He's marching on Winterfell. All right,
yeah, but in the show,
I don't know what happens in the show.
All right, I'm telling you what happens in the show. He gets defeated, and Brienne of Tarth,
who defeats him?
The friggin' Jon Snow defeats him.
Stannis?
Wait, hold on. I got my shit all wrong. Wait a minute. Okay. Now I remember. Stannis marches with Jon Snow. Actually, it's Stannis and Jon Snow versus Bolton. Right. The crazy bastard Bolton, and they're fighting the Battle of the Bastards, and in the woods, Brienne of Tarth confronts Stannis. Remember, she was Renly's knight.
Yes.
So she's like, you murdered your brother.
She's part of Renly's Rainbow Guard. That's right. Yeah. And was in love with him for showing kindness to her when everyone else.
Right.
Was,
So by the way, if you are enjoying this episode, please leave me your skull. I want your skull. Leave a skull in the live chat. Leave a skull during the replay of the broadcast. I need all the skulls so that I can hang them on my wall. So
bring us your bones.
Skulls. Yeah.
Bring us your bones.
Yes, or dead body bones as well.
Right. Bring us your bones.
Bring us your bones. Dead body bones. So, but the point being with Stannis is that you see Stannis die off screen. It's a rarity. Everybody, if you're meant to die in a show, it has to be seen. If we don't see it, then you did not really die. That is always the case. That's a rule of all moviedom and TVdom. This is an exception to that rule, and I would say that The Sopranos is the ultimate exception to that rule, because the foreshadowing that happens, that there's a foreshadowing when he's in the boat with Bobby, and he says, you don't even hear it when you get whacked. It just, everything goes black. That is informing the audience. That is a setup to pay off the end of the show. And it's done.
There's that. And there's also that whole scene.
That's a smoking gun to me.
Yeah. There's also that scene where you have, I forget who it is, man. Syl is at a sit down or at a dinner with a bunch of New York guys when one of them gets whacked, and what happens with the camera is like you don't even.
Oh yeah, right. It sprays on him.
Promo, and it sprays at him.
Yeah,
and it's a really interesting scene. I remember the first time I rewatched and I saw that, I was like, "What the hell is happening here?" I don't.
That's at the that's in the final war.
Okay,
right.
No, it wouldn't be, because if it was in the final war, they would have been going after Syl also.
It's in season 6.
It is definitely in season 6, which is part of that build up for the payoff that you're talking about. Also, I mean, listen, I can't really give. It's hard for me to give an original argument on this because I've read so much conjecture on it, and I really buy into the theory that there was a certain sequence of shots of framing, and you know, I'm sort of ad-libbing right now,
Right.
where at that last scene, it's like you get, you know, 7 seconds of this person's point of view, then 7 seconds of Meadow, then 7 seconds from Tony's eyes, then 7 seconds of, you know, this angle, and it rotates in a way that is predictable and formulaic, and which leads to, you know, the 7 seconds that ought to be from Tony's perspective being that blacked out time, right? So if you watch it like it is, you know, if you look at it like that, then he's dead, right? Now, do I buy that? I do. But I also really like the fact that, and this is sort of, I've heard, you know, Steve Sharippa and Michael Imperioli talk about this, and this is, I don't remember what Michael really says, but Steve says in Talking Sopranos that, you know, you start this show, right, and we get to see, you know, life through his eyes for a certain amount of time, and then it just cuts away, and we don't know what happens after that. That's just the end of our window into his experience. And you know what? I like that too.
I think that's too much of a cop out.
Well, but the thing is, here's the thing, that what's cool about it is that I don't have to buy either one of them 100% because he doesn't lay it out for you.
Well, but here's the thing:
I mean,
what Steve just said about the slice of life and that you're in and you're out. It's him dying at the end still applies to that.
It might.
It plugs in.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because all in that last episode, you know, his lawyer is telling him that because of who was it? Not Gigi, Carlo's testimony. Carlo was a rat, and
yeah, so he died. He had a heart attack in the car. He just died in the car.
Who did?
Carlo.
Carlo did?
He was a rat. Yeah. The guy with the glasses.
No. That's Ray.
Oh, okay.
That's
I don't
Ray
remember Carlo.
Ray Curto died, but he gave a ton of information. Carlo is someone who was one of Tony's captains, and then when everyone is like, you know, going to the mattresses and Bobby is getting killed and all that stuff, Carlo sort of disappears and no one's heard from him and no one knows what's up. And then in the end, you find out that he like was, I think, arrested, and he is like talking, and
so
there's
Tony,
like a 90% chance that Tony's getting indicted anyway.
I was about to say,
whether
Tony's
he dies or not,
Tony's
it's almost
fucked.
irrelevant.
Yeah. His time is up. But I would say the most important part of the season is, you know, and again, like it's weird. Season 6 is weird because so much happens, and yet almost like nothing happens all at the same time. It's like such an amorphous season. You know, what oh crap, what was I just talking about? We were talking about
how much and how little happens.
What I was gonna say is that, you know, generally what, you know, when you're watching a narrative like with a character, the character grows or changes or evolves in some way. Good storytelling has the change of, right. Good storytelling has characters change and
where's my arc, Ollie? Yeah, the whole thing, you know, here, you know, Christopher has that whole scene where he's talking to Paulie in the first season. He's all depressed and he's saying, you know, he's trying to take the screenwriting courses, and he's saying, you know, characters start here, then something happens, and then something happened. Where's my arc, Paulie? You remember that?
Yeah,
so it's interesting that you're saying that because it's something that's kind of meta to the show.
Well, it's meta for both, but here's what's interesting for both Chris and Tony. Ultimately, neither one of them change, really. Like well, Chris gets worse. He gets worse.
I think so does Tony. I think Tony gets way worse.
Yeah, but when I say worse, well, if you want to say in the sense that like he stops trying, ultimately the show ends in another way that the show ends, besides Tony getting whacked or whatever you want to call it, is that the byline of the whole show, the hook of the show initially is a mob guy seeing a therapist, trying to be progressive and evolve and this, that, and the other. And in the second to last episode, Melfi is confronted with the sobering truth that Tony is a sociopath who will never, ever, ever find treatment in with what she does. And she's embarrassed at first. She's at dinner with her fellow therapists. They bring up a study that she wasn't even aware of. She reads the study.
The Yochelson study.
Right. Then she actually reads the study, and she finally comes to grips. She says to him, she says, "This is it. We're done." And they've been done many times before on both sides.
I don't think I can help you.
They're like, "I cannot help you."
But she does the professional thing and tries to refer to him
right
to a behaviorist.
Right. But the point is that what it's also saying is the show has to end because Tony's never going to get better.
No.
This is who he is, and it's just going to be more of the same.
He never wants to get better.
Yeah, but David
stop passing out.
David Chase said so. Jack, my friend, Jack.
Yes.
Jack said that he loves The Sopranos. He said something along the lines that like David Chase once said in some interview or something about how the cutting to black is actually us, the viewer, and we needed to be whacked so that we would stop watching and encouraging the violence and the show and everything, blah 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 blah, that sort of thing. And what's interesting is that all of this coincides. Tony's never going to get better. Tony's never going to evolve. It's just going to be more of the same. There's no point in us watching anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting take. And Tony is like getting worse, and he is really bad. Like, but what makes us forget sometimes how bad he is when you put him up next to Phil, who is just like a mean, ugly, kind of person.
Phil, Richie, Ralphie.
Yes. Look at the difference in between the way the two of them handled the whole Vito situation. Like Tony knows what he should do to posture himself as an alpha and as an old school mobster and all that. And he knows that he needs to whack him, but like, he doesn't really care. He doesn't really care that
he doesn't.
And Vito's a great earner, and he kind of wants to look the other way. If Tony had the choice, he would look the other way, man.
He did have the choice, and he chose he chose instead to sort of like allow Phil to do what he does.
Actually, I don't think he did allow it. I think he was pissed that Phil did that.
He was pissed, but he did not do enough to stop it. He could have done more, and he just sort of is like, he's fighting for it, but he's not putting up much of a fuss, which brings us to Vito and Johnny Cakes. The greatest romance there ever was. My favorite part of all of The Sopranos is the beautiful romance between Johnny Cakes and Vito. And ultimately, I had forgotten, it's Vito who does himself in. He kind of breaks off scot-free, at least for a time being. He could have potentially started a whole new life out there.
Yeah, but
even though he walked out on his kids, but whatever. Like,
could have started a whole new life out there. But the thing is, and it's funny because his boyfriend or whatever is like, "Oh yeah, he's like, you're a construction guy. Like, I can get you a gig, doing some stuff." And I mean, we saw in season 5 the kind of construction that Vito does. He sits on the site, eats donuts, cracks jokes, and blows security guards. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
what a life. Crazy white boy says from Baltimore. Crazy white boy from Baltimore mentions that picnic they had. Oh, yeah. Yes, the
or
best.
When Vito cooks for him, and he's like, and for a main course, pork chop and vinegar peppers. He does this little move. I don't know.
But yes, I know the move. But by far the best is. I mean, I could almost commission someone to do a painting of Vito being spooned by Johnny Cakes in bed, in the warm, comfortable bed, just like having a really nice time, really nice conversation, and then just going off to sleep. And I just thought, my God, what a slice of heaven for Vito to be with his Johnny Cakes. And it just all he messed it all up. He ruined a good thing.
The thing is, I mean, and here's something that I relate to so much is like, all right, he's got to have this job, right? He's out there and he's working, and it's got that inner monologue or dialogue,
right, which is so brilliant. It's an inner monologue.
Like, okay,
yes,
could be 10:15. Got to be 10:15 by now.
Mm-hmm.
Another hour. This will happen. And
it's waiting for lunch.
Things where you like, don't look at the clock yet. That'll only make it worse.
I've so done that. I've done that.
We all, I mean, and it's
very relatable. Very relatable.
It's a known fact that clocks slow down when you look at them. And
that's a quantum fact, actually.
Yeah, and if I want my job or whatever I'm doing, class I'm in or whatever, if I want it to take longer, then I know what to do is look at the clock. And, he tries to not do it. And he's like, all right, but now it's got to be 11. And he looks and it's like way earlier than he thought.
And it's like
that's
10
the
o'clock.
moment. That's the moment where he's like, fuck this. Like, I'm going to go.
He's like, I can't do. He's like, I cannot live this way. And you know what? Honestly, that's a whole sticky situation. And you know what else is sticky? Riot Stickers, the official sponsor of the Frumess channel. That's right. Riot Stickers has you covered when it comes to stickers. If you need sticking, Riot Stickers got you ticking. So Riot Stickers, you get 1,000 stickers for $79. You cannot beat this incredible deal. These stickers have a UV coating on them. Let me tell you something. I was just at the Genre Blast Film Festival out in Winchester, Virginia, and I had stuck one of these Frumess stickers on a pole in direct sunlight 2 years ago. And let me tell you something. That sticker did not bleach out. That red, the red is the first color to really bleach out from the sun. That red was as red as the reddest red you ever saw. I mean, you really can't go wrong with Riot Stickers. They're also printed on vinyl, which makes them resilient to water. You get 3-inch by 3-inch stickers. Like I said, link is down in the description. That's 1,000 stickers for $79. You go to riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's FRU, M as in Mary, ESS. Let's play the Less Than Jake theme song. By the way, everybody, the Riot Stickers sponsored Genre Blast Film Festival this year. Everybody was singing along to Riot Stickers and clapping after the song. Everybody was stoked about it. It made me so happy.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
And don't you forget it. I want to take a minute and talk about AJ. Let's talk about where AJ ends up. AJ had this whole friggin' time has been an insufferable prick. By the way, real quick, we got to finish up what happens to Vito. So Vito ends up dying at the hands of Phil, but very interesting. And I'm not going to lie, I did look this up on YouTube. I was watching some YouTube things. I did not come up with this. There's a lot of symbolism that Phil himself is a self-loathing in the closet gay man. And where is he when Vito meets his end? Phil comes out of the closet of where Vito is staying.
Now, do I think that's on purpose? I certainly don't think it's by accident.
Well, here's the thing. Generally speaking, not this isn't a 100% out of 100% all the time. But when you see something on the screen, it is not by accident, and that goes for everything.
That depends.
No. It does not depend. It's a very that is such a truth, man. Look, I'm not going to say it happens all the time.
If it's done right, then yes. But like
Phil coming out of a closet. Oh
yeah, on a show like this, then it's absolutely intentional.
When he's going to kill Vito for being gay
on a show of this caliber, there's absolutely no way that that's by accident. I'm saying there are shows of much lesser quality where it could just be happenstance. But how? Now let me counter this. Let me play devil's advocate for a second, okay? Now, it could be, symbolic, right? Or it could be Phil did that on purpose. You know what I mean? Phil hid in that closet on purpose, knowing what it meant. Like, within universe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't buy that. I think that is the subtle way of showing that Phil, mind you, Phil talks also about doing time and doing what you got to do.
A piece of tissue.
Right, yeah, because you yak off
grilled cheese off a radiator.
We know from Tony. Tony says that guys get a pass in jail because you got to do what you got to do. And so Phil, it's very possible that Phil might have had male lovers in prison.
Yeah, and maybe he's very ashamed of it.
Right. And no sooner as he get out, he projects
so detestable,
Right. So he projects it onto Vito, and Vito ultimately
and onto Vito's son.
It's like, oh, you look Vito's son. Yeah, he really poor Vito's son. I mean, the kid really gets a crap end of the stick.
And not only that, but then they try and
he turns like Molgoth.
And well, not only that, but like Tony feels somewhat responsible, or is made to feel somewhat responsible, and to like sort of pick up the bill of like sending him to a place that can help him. And like, it winds up being cheaper for Tony just to like send him to one of those horrible wilderness camps.
Yeah.
And Tony like loses in gambling, and so makes the cheaper choice. And I mean, from what I know about those wilderness camps, from what I've heard about those wilderness camps,
bad shit,
really bad shit. And Vito,
we knew, you and I know a lot of people that have had that experience.
Yeah, quite a few. And I mean, I can't speak from firsthand experience.
Neither can I.
But but I don't think they're supposed to be good. And I think it's
harrowing.
They're aware of that when they made the show. I mean, they know that this was, and they're like, they fucking wake the poor kid up out of his bed. And
that's real shit. That really happened. Shit. I mean, they don't do it. Wilderness stuff still exists, but not to the extent that it
was.
And it's not as fashionable. But it still happens, and that's really what happens to people, is that they are asleep in bed. Kids are asleep in bed. Problem kids who have behavioral issues.
Kids who like stomp on their own shit in the shower at high school.
Waffle stomping.
Yeah. Listen. All right. So Vito,
AJ,
we got the whole thing with Vito.
Let's talk about AJ. So AJ is an insufferable piece of shit this entire show. From being an underage piece of shit to being an adult 20-something piece of shit. He is a piece of shit through and through. And it's interesting, by the way.
I wouldn't say he's a piece of shit. He's just a baby.
It's not that he's a baby. He's a self-absorbed, narcissistic, like, I don't even
millennial. He's like the perfect millennial.
Well,
I mean, we're millennials and we aren't really like
he
that.
Is our age.
We aren't like that. He's exactly our age.
He's exactly our age. He's born in. We're both born in '85.
So, yeah, obviously, like millennials aren't all like that, but it was certainly, I think.
Yeah. Well, hold on a second. People
that
are
was
now.
Stereotype.
Hold on a second. Growing up in the 2010s and the late aughts, millennials were like the problem generation, and we were the complaining generation. All this shit. But now it's only now that people are starting to recontextualize all the shit that millennials have gone through.
Of course.
And recognize that we literally got fucked over as a generationally speaking. Talk about generationally speaking, we had it way worse than our boomer parents did. And
of course, yeah.
So, but point being is that he's the atypical millennial as you would frame what a millennial is supposed to be back then.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's supposed to represent sort of like the outcome of having rich parents who coddle him. You know what I mean? Who weren't able to really like commit to being disciplinarians to him. They had signs that he was troubled or ADHD or whatever, like from the beginning, and they don't really ever like commit to it because it's kind of takes too much work on their end.
They
They're
don't
both
give
kind of
him
lazy parents, honestly.
they don't really give him the
Attention.
support,
Yeah.
the support that he needs in order to break out of that. Tony is old school and this, that, and the other. But at the same time, in Tony's mind, Tony is doing a better job than his dad did. And so
and realistically, he probably is.
And he is. So
it's a low bar. It's a low fucking bar, though.
Yeah, but well, here's the thing, though, and this is the truth about being a parent in general. You generally try to. You're not going to necessarily always break the cycle. Thank you for your skulls, our family trips. I appreciate it. If you haven't left some skulls for me, please leave some skulls in the live chat or in the comments below. When you're a parent, you're trying. What's going on with you? Okay,
I'm trying to make the chair recline.
I feel bad. Oh, look at me reclining my chair. Woo! No, what you're trying to do is you're trying to push the board in the other direction. That's what you're trying to do. You're not going to necessarily break the cycle, but you're trying to do something slightly different. And even a few inches is better than no.
Wait, are we talking about the chair? Or are we talking about?
We're talking about parenting, but I guess it applies to the chair too. So, in Tony's mind, it's like, AJ got better than what I got. So,
Yeah, and Melfi calls that out. Melfi calls that out.
AJ.
I think actually at their last meeting, like he's saying, he's like, she realizes it's kind of like, I think it's one of the last things before she says, I don't think I can help you, is that he's like bitching about AJ. And he's like, if it was my old man, and she's like, you would have what? You would have left the boot in his ass or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the last straw for her. She's like, I've heard this a million fucking times.
Yeah.
But
she's hold on.
It's a broken record.
She is throughout that session too. She is frustrated with Tony because of the truth about who he really is, whether Tony knows who he really is or not. And she's like embarrassed for herself. She's furious that she's wasted so much time. And now here he is going off about AJ, and she's like, I'm done. I'm done with you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, like she might have maybe given him a chance if he went in there and was anything but like the same old shit. But he just like sort of proved her intuition, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not her intuition, but her judgment ultimately.
Right.
But listen, AJ has a lot going on in this season.
He does. This most seasonous season.
There's the thing with the pool, which.
Right. He tries to unalive himself because he's depressed.
He's been.
Wait. Hold on a second. You're skipping over something. He finds a girlfriend. And by the way, she is gorgeous Latina girlfriend, just beautiful girl.
Oh,
yeah.
We're talking about the girl later on.
No, that's
the blonde girl who's like still in high school.
She's an afterthought. Comparatively.
You're talking about Blanca.
Blanca is the love of AJ's life, and Blanca is good for AJ. AJ is the best he's ever been. It's the one time where he actually changes. Is she? I don't think so at all.
I don't know if she's taking advantage of him, but she changes her mind about him pretty quickly.
This is what happens. She ultimately realizes because Blanca has got a good head on her shoulders. Remember, the Sopranos
do a lot of stuff.
Has she?
She's like a big part of the MCU.
She is absolutely in that show in the Sopranos. She's breathtakingly beautiful. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. Now the Sopranos. We have to remember the Sopranos. They are not good people. Even the kids are not good people. We know AJ's not a good person, but even Meadow. And here's why Meadow is not a good person. Meadow is probably the closest thing to a good person, but ultimately they all know what their father is. They all know what they are enabling by just going with the flow. And ultimately, as a collective whole, I guess you can't totally blame Meadow or AJ because whatever, but collectively as a whole, the Sopranos are not good people. Blanca is a good person. She is a hardworking single mom who falls for AJ.
I don't know enough about her to make that judgment.
We absolutely know enough about her.
I don't know that kind of judgment is
No.
really what a
Wrong.
show like this is concerned with.
Wrong.
I think the point of the show is sort of that people listen, some are worse than others, but there's no real good people. And I mean, yeah, there's some bad people, but like,
But that's not what I mean. I mean that
you don't
that
know anything about her.
That we know a lot less about other characters and we know enough to make a judgment call. She is ostensibly a good person. Okay. That's where I'm putting her. I'm putting her in the good pile as opposed to Tony. Where would you put Tony?
We have a lot more
Protagonist or
evidence
not?
to go with on Tony to know that he's not a great person.
We
don't know anything about her. Like,
This is what we know about her. She works hard. She has a kid that she takes care of, and she just wants to have like a good domestic life. Those are the three things we know about her. And in those three things, she is genuine. When she enters the Soprano world, she's disgusted by the wealth. She's sort of like, she starts to realize the more she spends time around the Sopranos, not AJ, when it's just AJ, she's super into him. But when she starts seeing him around his family, and see the wealth and this, that, and the other, that it doesn't matter how good he takes care of her kid, because AJ is really good with her kid. She starts to see that it's funny how they judge her. They go, well, she's 10 years older and she has a kid. But ultimately, she starts to see that he's like this rich boy, deadbeat, whatever, like sorry sack, this, that, and the other. And it's crystallized for her during the premiere of Christopher's movie, when in a variety of ways.
I forgot about that movie, man.
Yeah, the movie, the Saw movie.
Hatchet, right? Is it
Hatchet, which is about Tony, which is totally about his relationship with Tony and this, that, and the other. It's really well done. It's really funny. And they have the screenwriter, by the way, who writes the screenplay, the gambler from earlier season. Remember?
I wasn't with, oh yeah, and JT,
who gets capped.
I wish I could have done season 3, talked about season 3 with you, man. And whatever. Because there's so much there that season I really know.
Let me finish my point about Blanca. She sees him at the premiere. She sees how he's acting. And then the next time we see Blanca, she's getting into a car with her brother, and she makes a clean break. She's like, he proposes to her. She's not sure. And ultimately, she walks away from what would have been a very comfortable life living with AJ through the Soprano family. She would have been taken care of. But you want to know something? She walks away from that. If she was not a good person, she would stay with AJ. But because she is a good person, because she ostensibly knows the difference between right and wrong, you said we needed proof and evidence. There's your evidence that she is not. I never
really read it that way, but it sounds, I buy it. Like, what I think is really funny is,
and then AJ gets really depressed, and that's when he gets really depressed.
But he gets really depressed. No, he gets depressed, and then he starts doing good.
It's called Cleaver, not Hatchet. Cleaver.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Crazy White Boy from Baltimore.
Man, I have no credibility right now.
No, you're good. You're doing great.
There's a time, and I don't remember if this is before or after the breakup, but no, it's after the breakup, and AJ's doing pretty well. He's like on the right meds, and he's like doing pretty well, and he's like out with that's right, because he's trying to get over her, and he's out with one of Pat Parisi's kids.
Right. He gets he's hanging out with the frat guys who are pouring acid on the toes.
And there's that the kid who's like from I want to say he's from Kenya or something, and he bikes into the door and he watches them beat the shit out of this guy who's basically totally innocent, and
totally innocent.
And he's talking about it with his therapist, and he's depressed again. And was doing good, and then he's depressed again after he sees that.
Right, and he's also there's that whole thing about
thick, though. He's so thick because the therapist says did anything about the African boy or African student remind you of Blanca? And he's insinuating that this is a guy who was working right? And
Yeah.
like working class and like, you know, trying his best and stuff. And who's like, you know, maybe an immigrant. And he's like, you know, did this boy like remind you of Blanca? And AJ's like, what? Blanca's not black. I mean, he's pretty tan. And that's like the best connection he can make is like
he is absolutely a worthless piece of shit, AJ. He really is. He really is. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of her right now. She's gorgeous. She's absolutely gorgeous.
yeah, those Dominican man.
Yeah. Right. That's right. So you know, AJ, he gets really freaking depressed. He goes on this whole tear, and it's kind of like weird. It's like a weird place to leave AJ.
And well, at one point he feels like he can find some purpose in like avenging his dad. And he has this crazy cockamamie idea that he's gonna like it's wild, you know, and there's a scene where like after that happens when like Tony like gets him out, like bails him out or whatever.
Right.
Where he has this like heart to heart with him. And AJ's like, but whenever we watch Goodfellas, like whenever we watch The Godfather, you say that's your favorite part. And he's like, he realizes that his son is just a baby. He's like, AJ, it's a movie. Like, you know, like AJ's whole idea of reality is so out of touch. Like AJ is so out of touch. And he didn't ever really, like you said, had the support he needed. And he thinks, you know, and he's also obviously got a genetic predisposition for depression, panic attacks and depression disorder.
Yep.
And it's something that they talk about. I think it's sort of a leitmotif that threads its way through the entire show. And it, you know, it comes from Livia, where she says, you know, when she's in the hospital and AJ goes to visit her and she's like, you know, you're all alone in the end, you know, no one's there for you. And in the end,
right.
Like,
that begins as he has that's what starts his existential, like,
it's all a big nothing.
Enlightenment. Yeah. But he stays that way. He talks about pollution. He wants to join the army and just like all this stuff. Like,
I know people like that, man. We know a lot. I think people like that have become, with the internet, with the advent of the internet, and that's kind of where he's getting all into it. He's watching Al Jazeera online or whatever. Yeah. But you know, it's something that goes on in the world of The Sopranos. You know, Christopher was talking about you know, you ever just get bored with the regularness of life? Like, you ever feel like the regularness of life is just weighing you down? There's a lot of existential stuff going on, you know. Did we talk about
we should
Juliana Skiff?
Who?
Juliana Skiff? She is like the real estate person who is like trying to develop the old neighborhood, and Tony.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
Tony's got, there's so much in this season. Tony's got a new lease on life ever since he wakes up. I don't even want to talk about Kevin Finnerty. All right, let's just mention it. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. He's having a dream.
Which guy is Kevin Finnerty?
That's
again?
That's Tony's alter ego when he's in.
That was such an annoying, like unnecessary,
very unnecessary.
Chalk that up to just some of the dream symbolism shit that they do.
Yeah,
whatever.
You know, it was whatever. It's not worth
Kevin Finnerty, but basically, the real estate agent. She ends up sort of involved with Chris.
Well, hold on, let's back up for a second.
All right, go ahead. You do it.
There's an attraction there between her and Tony, and Tony wants to fuck her, right?
Yeah.
And then you know, she's like, oh, I'm like engaged to someone or something. And then something happens where she kind of decides, you know, maybe I am willing to sleep with him. And then they meet up. They're like, oh yeah, let's sign this contract like over, like at my place.
Yeah, she knows
and then
what the
she
deal
goes
is.
to pull the trigger. He goes for it, and he has this like sudden onset of like doing the right thing and like not cheating on Carmela anymore. And he kind of like makes a big deal of it. And like,
does he cheat on her after that though? I think he does.
No. He like, well, yeah, that's later, but he's like, he's like, I don't want to do this. And he like kind of makes her feel like a piece of shit. And then just like walks out.
Yeah.
Like, signs the things like, are we done here? And like really kind of fucks with her emotions. And then I think she
meets Chris,
and she's like sharing about it at a meeting or like with her sponsor or something. And she, you know, obviously wanted to do the toxic thing and like cheat on her fiance, or like, you know, like she knew she was like doing the wrong thing, and then had it sort of thrown back at her. And then somehow she gets involved with Christopher. I don't know if they meet.
They met in a meeting.
In the meeting.
And what ends up happening is, and you know, this is an example of, to me, this is one of, you know, there's a lot of shows out there, you know, you got to do your paint by numbers, you know, I have a addiction. I got to go to a meeting. And it's always like it's always not very real or accurate to what meetings really are like in 12-step circles. They always have some weird way of sharing, or the sponsorship is weird, but they do one thing in the Sopranos that I thought was so true to like all of that. And it's when she's sick and she says, I need a special kind of tea bag. And I take this tea bag and it makes me, it'll do the trick. I don't want to take DXM because DXM will get me high. You know, DXM is a cough suppressant in cough syrup. So it literally match cuts from Chris getting her this certain type of tea bag to them freebasing heroin. And it just is such like it's so,
like the two sickies don't make a welly.
No, yeah, but not just that. Yes, of course that, but it's just the idea of like how it's like you open the door just a fucking crack.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it just fucking blows open. How you try to be so careful and it just blows open, and before you, like, they don't even blink an eye and they're fucking freebasing heroin.
It's like that was that was their destiny. You know what I mean? And it's like, how long are we going to kid ourselves and pretend?
Like that is like what they ultimately, like, it's probably deep down that's what they really fantasize about doing together. But what's just amazing to me though is just like, it's just that it's like this moment of not being of unguardedness that allows for that to take place.
And then there's the ride,
right?
Which is probably my, you know, top 5 episodes for me. Everything about it, from, you know, that little scene where they're with the Vipers. We're with the Vipers, and they do the, you know, it's playing. What is it?
That song.
That song, yeah. Is it slow? It's not Slow Ride, Take It Easy. It's All Right Now, Baby. It's
some 70s music that Tony really likes.
And they're playing that, and they just see this opportunity, and like suddenly, you know, Chris is sober, right? And then they got all this wine, and they're all on this, they're riding this high from, you know, the shootout with this biker gang and stuff. He's like, I hit him, and you know, their friendship is like to the max. You know, it's like nothing.
Right. It's the last, and it's the last time. It's the last time that they're ever going to be tight. But what's so sad about it, and it's a repeat of what happened with Tony B and Tony, where they tell him, "Hey, loosen up, have a drink."
Well, it's not even loosen up, have a drink at this point. It's like Tony doesn't have any inkling as to like the way that whole disease works. And so he's just like, you know, listen, like, don't do heroin, but like, of course you can have like a glass of wine with me. We'll you know, and he just finds out that he's like, what does he get married? And
because my son will be my strength.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, yeah. And then, you know, by the end of the episode, Chris is shooting dope. And there's that great sequence with the Fred, what's his name? There's that Dolphin song by Fred Neil. And I mean, it's exquisite. That whole episode is exquisite. I love it. And it's got that flashback of him telling Tony about Adriana. and it's so deeply emotional, and it's a physical scene, you know, and
it brings them even closer because Tony does this thing for him at a time where Christopher really kind of fucks up in the sense at least by mob standards.
Yeah.
He fucks up in the sense that or the way that it would be viewed by his constituents is you brought in a fucking rat. You fucked up. And so he does the one thing that could literally save his life. He tells Tony, proving how trustworthy he is, and basically sending Adriana to her death.
Yeah. And then, you know, James Gandolfini has this thing. He's got these really big hands. He's got this certain physicality.
He's a bear. He's
like a bear. He's like, you know, and
he's like this. He goes,
you know, and he is. And Christopher is like there. He's crying, and he like can't even say it. And he's like, Adriana, feds. And then like, you know, like at first Tony like he shoves him or something, or he's feeling to see if he's wearing a wire. And Chris is like, how could you even think that? And then like Tony's overcome with warmth for him, and he takes those big bear paws and like puts them around his head, and like he's like the little like a cub, you know what I mean? And he's like, it's all right, and he like cradles him. The acting in this show is really second to none, man. It's unlike anything I've ever seen.
In any case, what they do that's so great is that they cut out this moment. They make it a surprise. We think for a second Adriana is going to get away. They even tease us with a fantasy of her driving to Baltimore.
Now we're talking about fifth season again.
I know. Yeah. What I'm saying is the writing and the editing is brilliant because what they did was they took out. It was like they gave us an Oreo and they took the cream out and saved it for later. Yeah. They scraped all the cream out. They gave us one cookie, which is. Chris is gonna or Adriana is driving up to whatever to meet her fate. The other cookie is Silvio dragging her out of the car and capping her, and then they save the cream, which was the betrayal. We don't get to see the betrayal. We had to wait a whole year before the sixth season. Actually, we waited even longer than a year, right? Because the season was split, so it's more like 2 years before you get to.
Well, that was part of 6A. The ride is part of 6A, but still, there was a pretty big hiatus, if I remember correctly.
You had to wait a really long time.
By those standards, back then. These days, we're used to waiting, you know, for fucking House of the Dragon next season or Stranger Things or whatever. We're used to waiting like 3 years between.
Have you watched House of Dragon? I haven't seen it yet.
It's very good.
I'm gonna check it out.
It's not great. It's not as great as, I mean, listen.
That's a whole other show.
Finish the books. George, if you're watching, finish the books.
He is watching. But he's never. Listen, I'm going to tell you the truth, man. He's never going to finish those books. I think he ultimately knows that they fucked up the show so bad. And if he is finishing the books, he has already decided, maybe he's already finished them. He is not going to release that shit until Game of Thrones, the TV show, is like years. He wants distance now because they fucked up so bad that he needs the distance.
I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more work than he anticipated. I think there's so much going on. But listen, I just want to say this. There's only one thing that would get me as excited as finding out that book is out, and probably less excited, not even as excited.
Would it make you come a little bit in your pants?
No. But
yeah, it would. Come on.
If I found out that David Lynch is working on a feature-length production, that would also.
When was the last time David Lynch made a movie? It's been a while. Inland Empire.
I would count Twin Peaks: The Return as a movie, as an 18-hour.
It's not a movie. No, it's not an
18-hour movie. No, it is. It is. It absolutely is.
It's amazing that they gave him money to make that.
They said, here, we are giving you full artistic control. And his idea of full artistic control was fucking
gotta wait.
Listen, if you want to talk about that sometime, I'd
have to rewatch it. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I could ever rewatch that.
I didn't think I could, but I did, and it was so worth it. And
I want to see. I'm still waiting to get Lost Highway on Criterion to watch. I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
It's on Criterion. I want to get it.
I'll tell you something. I watched that movie with the flu by myself on shrooms, and what if I had to promise myself I wasn't going to
covers this magic moment, and it's a really good fucking
cover. Myself I was never going to watch anything weird for at least another year because I got so weirded out by it. It just was too weird of an experience.
And
anyway,
did that happen?
Huh? No, I got weird pretty soon after. All right, so listen. So we got the ride in. We got the.
Well, hold on. We were talking. What I was saying was that we got this in. They did an incredible job excising that part and then saving it for season 6, and they brought it back. They're like, let's go to this super tender moment to really crystallize Tony and Chris's relationship, because in the very next bit of the show, I don't even know if maybe it's the same episode, maybe it's the episode right before, they kill Christopher. Tony kills Christopher.
Also, there's the whole thing with like Carmela being like seeing Liz. Carm sees Liz, and Liz is like, I'm not drunk. I haven't had a drink in years. Like, there's no way that she, because like the story, they didn't come up with a very good backstory for Adriana. They're like, oh, she left me. She ran off with some guy. Like, they didn't count on the fact that like maybe you need like a little bit better of a story, because she was like really close with Carmela to the degree that you can be close when you have all those secrets.
Very, very, very close. Very close.
So you didn't think, and so Chris is, like, oh yeah, she went away, and Carm's like, what? Like, oh my, because they were gonna get married and shit. And so Tony's just like, it's like Carm doesn't know, like, it should be obvious to her at this point. It's like, he's like, oh yeah, she went. It's like, no, like I saw her mother, like, and he's like, listen, Tony is like, listen, we don't want to spoil his progress. Let's just leave it alone. And he says, we don't want to spoil his progress. And he's got the problem.
That's why Carm is also a very bad person, even though ultimately because Carm is not stupid. She knows
she doesn't know right away. Hold on a second. Gets the idea.
She knows almost she knows her husband is a terrible human being, and she basically trades her morality for material possessions.
I don't think she knows that. I don't think she
knows her husband's a murderer.
Yeah, but she doesn't think that he killed Adriana.
Right. Yeah, that is true. And she most certainly never finds out. Nobody finds out.
Maybe we should get a
private eye.
A private eye. And he goes, as he's swirling the wine, he goes, I wouldn't want to spoil his progress. And then he sniffs the wine.
Fucking evil bastard. So then what happens to Chris? Chris has been getting high on the low. He's at this point, he's remarried. He's got a house in the burbs. He gets into it with Paulie over Paulie's nephew. They have a whole back and forth. And Paulie and Chris have always had a tumultuous relationship since the beginning. And it culminates this one last time where they go back and forth with each other.
Yeah, he pushes little Paulie out the window.
Pushes little Paulie out a window. Little Paulie breaks his neck. Paulie Walnuts destroys the front lawn of Chris's new house, and that's seemingly that for a while. And then Chris goes off the wagon when he has to go to the club, and he basically just gets like Tony and Paulie rip on Christopher, and Christopher gets so insecure that he starts drinking again, and that leads to the heroin use. They're driving.
Then he shows up. No, then he shows up at the club, JT's place, and he's all fucked up. And JT says, the one thing you never want to say to a mobster, you're in the mafia. And Chris just shoots him, like, impulsively.
Well, no, what he does, I think JT suggests or alludes to the idea that he could, like, tell on Christopher or something. I forgot what he said.
No, it's not that. It's like Christopher is just there, and he's wasted, and he's, like, not really coherent. He's not like
right. But here's what's interesting.
He's not reasonable.
When Christopher goes there, he's going there for relief. He has no intention of killing JT.
No.
JT has no intention of dying. What happens in that when things go south, all of that changes. JT is shot and killed. And what it does is
things go south. It's just that, he's having basically a little pity party. And JT is sober and is like trying to tell him, like, listen,
Right.
man, get it together. And Chris is
All the
not
things
getting
that
what Chris is not getting what he wants out of it.
Yeah, but Chris has said that to JT in the past when he was taking him for all his money after he lost.
Yeah, but he didn't really. That was disingenuous, though. That was just him, like, you know. But what I'm saying is, like, he says, you know, like, and JT's like, listen, man, sober up, go to a meeting, this and that. Chris doesn't want to hear it. And JT sort of has this moment where he just was like, dude, like, what do you expect? You're in the mafia. You know,
Right.
and that's what he says. He says, you're in the mafia.
And that causes him to snap.
And Christopher doesn't think it through because he's an emotional person, because he's in an inebriated state, and because he's a person who's desensitized to violence. So without even thinking, he just says, oh, what, you know, let me just do this. Let me just do that. He just shoots him and boom, that's it.
Right. And now here's the other thing too. There's have you heard this phrase, Jeremy Spice? Do you know this phrase? It's called save the cat. Do you know what that means?
I know shave the cat.
Okay, so save the cat is a screenwriting technique that you will see throughout all of cinema history. Not all of cinema history, but it's a trope that has been coined as this term save the cat. And what it basically means is if your character saves a cat or saves, like, you know, it's your character does something that makes your character likable. Your character does something. A great example, look at Ripley and her cat Jinx. Her cat in Alien. Mm-hmm. She goes back to save her cat. She doesn't leave her cat on the Nostromo, right? What's his name? It's going to bother me. Not Jinx. What the fuck is the name of the cat?
Is it Clyde?
No, Binksy? Binksy?
Remember Clyde.
Yeah, I remember Clyde. So, but save the cat basically means you do something esteemable that makes the audience like you. And you'll see characters all the time do what is known as save the cat. Sometimes it literally means that they literally actually do save the cat.
Okay, and
it could be a variety of things. In the case of the Sopranos and Christopher in particular, you know, we've grown to love Christopher despite the fact that he does horrible things. I mean, Christopher is one of the most deplorable characters on the show,
and that he's just like grossly incompetent.
Yeah, there's just a million reasons not to like.
Yeah,
but what they do is they basically do the opposite of save the cat when they let him kill JT. It's a murder that is so blatantly, there's something so egregious about murdering JT in such an innocent guy in cold blood. Like JT did literally nothing to deserve the fate that he got, apart from associating with the mob, which is, I guess, you know, whatever.
He didn't know what he was doing, though. I mean,
whatever. The point is that JT is the guy.
JT.
Right. That's right. JTS. So the point of what I'm saying is they set us up for Christopher's death by having him murder someone in cold blood that we would never want to see. No one wants to see JT get murdered. Nobody is.
Yeah, but you know what? Also, like, I don't think anyone cared that much. Like JT,
I had forgot that happened, and when that happened, when I was rewatching it like a few months ago, my jaw dropped. I was like, "Holy shit!" And then the very next episode, they kill Chris. And
you know who JT reminds me of? Is in Westworld, Teddy. You know Teddy.
James Marsden.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the man in black is just like Teddy, and just like shoots him like you get it, Teddy. You're like a good guy. Like no one really cares about you.
So
listen, hold on. So next episode, we get to this whole thing with Christopher.
Right.
Now they're listening to the Departed soundtrack. Right. They're listening to Comfortably Numb from the Departed soundtrack. There's kind of a lot going on from, in terms of like subliminal stuff. Right. Like the lyrics to Comfortably Numb. Right. First of all, the Departed. Right. What is the Departed? Right. Dead people. Right. The Departed. And I think Christopher even says when he puts it on, he goes, "Oh, have you heard this? It's the Departed soundtrack. It's fucking killer," or something along those lines. And then, what is it? There is no pain. You are receding. A distant ship smoke on the horizon. You're only coming through. And I mean, whatever. And there's some allusion to death.
You're talking about the foreshadowing of his death.
Yes, in that scene. And I think, again, the nuance and the subtlety of Christopher being high on coke. I think it winds up being coke. He's not like on, no. I think they find coke in his bloodstream. And it's like he's not all geeked up like you would see in movies, like someone's on coke, like Ralphie.
No, he seems like he's down, like he's on a downer. Actually,
no. Like so when Ralphie's on coke, he like really overdoes it, and he's swinging the chain around, and he's fucking fighting people and stuff, and attacking Georgie. But when Chris is on coke, they find cocaine in his bloodstream, and he looks like he's on a downer because he's like trying to play it down. And so he's like, it's like his face. It's like,
he looks like he's on a depressant. Like he doesn't look like he's on coke. He looks like he's like,
Yeah. I mean, I always read it as he's on coke. And so it just makes him sort of like hyper aware of the fact that like Tony's checking him out, and he's just like trying really hard to act normal. So his face is just kind of like stiff and stuff. And I mean, it reads to me like he was on coke. And I think I think there's a shot of Tony also subtly clocking the fact that like Chris is not sober. And
well, no, I don't think Tony was aware at all that Chris wasn't sober until he says it.
I don't know, man. There's a look he gives him.
Maybe I'd have to rewatch, but the point being is that
he has this like he doesn't know exactly what's going on, but he like looks at him like that for a second.
But basically, look, the car flips over. They get into an accident. Tony walks away unscathed. Chris is in bad shape. He is bleeding, and Tony looks in the back seat. He sees that a branch has come through the window of the car and rests on a baby seat.
And Chris also says something like, "Oh, we gotta like switch seats or whatever."
He says, but here's the thing: he doesn't ask it, and he doesn't say we gotta. He demands it. He actually demands it, and that always. When I saw that again, I was like, whoa. It was like he says, switch with me. You gotta switch with me. I'll never pass the drug test.
Mm-hmm.
And that is for Tony. I think ultimately, like, I think if Christopher wasn't as fucked up as he was, like physically banged up, I truly think that Tony would have helped him out and would have given him another chance or let him live. I think because Tony it was such a mess. I think that's what motivated Tony to kill him. He looked in the back seat, used that as the justification, along with the fact that he was high, and just said, it's so much easier if you just die right now. It just makes my life convenient. If he had gotten out of the car on his own accord and been okay, Tony wouldn't have attacked him. They would have just gotten out of it. It would have been whatever.
It's also like a,
it was an opportunity.
Blood.
Yeah, it was like, I was about to say, like in the same way that like certain animals, you literally took the words out of my mouth. In the same way that like certain animals, like crabs, they're opportunistic feeders. And what it means is if like the opportunity presents itself, it's going to try and feed. But if it doesn't, it's not even going to think about it. It's like not even. And when Tony sees how injured Chris is, he's like, it's easier to do this. And he just, without scruple, just and
then he's got this whole thing where he's like trying to
justify
not even justify it, but like he's almost like shocked at how genuine other people's emotional response is. Like everyone else is like kind of like Carmela's kind of devastated.
He's not shocked.
He's not shocked. No, but he's like,
no, he's tired. He doesn't want to fucking deal with it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He does. It's kind of like the thing with his mother. It's what you're going to do. What are you going to do? You know, like it's just, but he he has to, what bothers him, what irks him is he has to pretend like he gives a shit.
Yeah.
And he has to go through this.
And there's that whole scene about where he's talking to Melfi.
Right. It's a dream.
He just opens up and is honest. And it's like, listen, I've killed family members before, my cousin Tony. And I'm like, oh my God, he's actually being real with her for the first time. And it's a dream. And then a couple scenes later, he gives his edited version of what he would like to say.
Right.
And it's like, and I mean, that's why ultimately therapy, one of the reasons why therapy is never going to work for him. You can't be honest with your therapist. It's not going to work, and he can't be honest because he's tied to, the law, or she's tied to the law rather. So he can't be honest. And even if he could be 100% honest with her, he probably wouldn't have any therapeutic value because he is a sociopath.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that things always have to end up in his favor. And you can't, if you tell the truth, you run the risk of things not ending up in your favor and presents a conflict of interest. So ultimately, Tony is left in the situation where he has to act and when Paulie's mother dies at the same time, his aunt, actually, technically,
that's his
aunt
mom.
It is his mom. Totally his mom.
Her face.
You're right. Oh, she's the best. By the way, we just want to.
Paulie, are you gonna come sit with me?
when he kills her friend over the money in the mattress, she's like, "You were always a bad kid, Paul."
He tries to play it off like he's there. He's like, "Oh, I was gonna." It's like, the fuck are you?
You want to know something? That was wrong of me. You're 100% right. That was his mother, hands down. That was his mother.
Yeah.
I just was saying in the fact that he found out that that's what happened to Jack Nicholson.
He was really horrible to her about
Jack Nicholson found out when he was much older. He found out that his mom was actually his grandmother and that his older sister was his mother, and it fucked him up bad.
Yeah.
So Tony is so relieved to go to Paulie's mom's thing that's happening across the way from Christopher's, because he just wants to get out. He doesn't want to sit there because, people treat him, because he said he's like, he's my nephew, he's my son, he's my cousin, like all this stuff, even though they're distantly related. Now, what's interesting is it's kind of amazing how Tony, when we're going to fold Many Saints of Newark in for a second, that Tony held Christopher as a baby, and to think that Tony also fucking, shuffled loose his mortal coil so many years later is kind of really heavy. And two, that it was Junior who ended up killing Dickie Moltisanti, which in turn really changes so much of Christopher and Tony's relationship, because Tony, trying to get Christopher's loyalty, tells him that's the guy that killed your dad. It was a cop.
Yeah, there's that whole thing. Was that
he fucking lied to him. I think that was 5. It was definitely 5.
He lied to him, and Chris realizes it when he has the guy tied up there. He's like, you know what? It doesn't even matter. He wants you dead.
Maybe. I always took it that
he says those words. He says, you know what? It doesn't even matter if he is lying. The fact is, he wants you dead.
Right. But that just goes to show that Christopher has unlimited, undying loyalty to Tony. But the reality is that he, Tony fucking lied to him in such a way. I mean, really just atrociously lied. The Many Saints of Newark, just to touch on it, because I'm not going to do a separate episode. It's not that great. It's actually, I mean, there are a few moments, like, again, finding out that Junior was the one that whacked Chrissy's dad is like actually pretty profound. And like I said, changes the Sopranos in an interesting way, where we know that Tony lied to Chris. But there's like, just, it's really, it wasn't cast well. And, that's the problem with, just in the way that I've heard you say how you don't want to watch biopics because there's no way that anybody can do the justice of the person.
I don't want to watch someone else, some other actor, be fucking Han Solo. Like, bro, if you're not Harrison Ford, you're not Han Solo. You know what I'm saying?
There are
If you're
certain hold
if
on.
you're
There
not-
are
if you're
certain
not
roles where
Steve
that
Van
is
Zandt,
not true.
if you're not Stevie Van Zandt,
Right.
I don't want to
How
see
can-
you as Silvio.
You're
Like,
not going to be Silvio. I agree. I do agree. So listen,
if you're
that's
not fucking
subjective.
Sly Stallone,
Yeah, no one
then
can play
who are
Rocky.
you to be Rocky?
It's
Although I would
true.
have loved to have seen the musical. I bet it was dope.
Although I will tell you, hands down, there's nobody who could replace Robert Shaw. Jaws is an unremakeable movie, as is Back to the Future. There are just some movies that are
You know what the
casted.
musical? Back to
Yes,
the musical.
and his son plays Quint.
I heard Michael J. Fox was at my job today.
Why didn't you say hello to him? He's a Misfits fan, by the way.
I didn't see him. Cindy Crawford was there too.
Why were they there?
Um,
I could name drop too at the place that I work, but I'm not it doesn't say publicly on the internet where I work, and I keep it that way on purpose. And B, I wouldn't name drop like you. So I'll tell you when we go off air.
all right.
But that is cool that Michael
I
J.
didn't
Fox.
see them. I just heard that they might be there.
I mean, it's still fucking cool though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Um,
Would have been a lot cooler if you got to take a picture or see them though.
Yeah, but so check it out. Many Saints of Newark. I watched it with an open mind.
Didn't you work on it? You worked on it too.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
You know what? I think the reason you're thinking that is because I was working on a project.
Plot Against America.
Yes, that's what it wound up being.
Right.
It was like an HBO thing or whatever.
Right.
But I went in with very low expectations. I saw the trailer. It didn't move me.
Yeah.
I don't really love the idea of it's like the Beatles if they had come out with an album in 75 or something. Like, you know what, man, leave good enough
It's
alone.
like it's digging up an exquisite corpse. That's let it
so,
lie.
So I mean, the only exception is Twin Peaks: The Return, because that was a horse of another color.
I think there's a lot of exceptions.
Yes, okay, probably
There's
a lot
of exceptions,
All right.
but in those
So-
two cases that you don't
So
want.
I watched it with an open mind. I figured I'm probably not going to like it, but I'm sure, and listen, did you see, was it called Not Fade Away?
No, what is that?
So Not Fade Away was an American drama film directed by David Chase. It came out in December of 2012.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, this is going to be good. It had James Gandolfini. And it's, named after Not Fade Away, which was a Buddy Holly song, famously covered by
Roy
the Rolling
Orbison.
Stones, and
Okay.
my personal favorite, the Grateful Dead. So I thought this movie was going to be great. And it's it's about a guy trying to join the rock and roll scene or something. It was ultimately a fucking really forgettable movie that didn't move me at all, despite all of the implications that it probably would be right up my alley, and it just didn't move me. And so I realized, and I think David Chase, if I'm not mistaken, only really directed 2 episodes of The Sopranos. And so
He did the pilot and he did the finale, I think, right?
yeah, I believe that's the case. I don't want to misspeak, but so it occurred to me that maybe he's not the greatest director, but
You know why they direct the pilot, right? Same thing with Vince Gilligan.
No.
Because if you direct the pilot, you are entitled to residuals on every single.
Interesting.
You get director's residuals on, let's say you're just a pilot director, you're not like the showrunner, or you didn't create the show and you just direct the pilot. If the show takes off for 10 seasons and goes into syndication and shit, you're tied into all of that shit just
That's
from
cool.
directing the pilot.
So, but to my point that David Chase is probably not a great director, or maybe he is, but maybe for whatever other reason, Not Fade Away was just a miss for me personally. So I kind of suspected that would be the case with Many Saints of Newark as well. But I figured,
did he direct? He directed Many Saints of Newark.
Yes. So I believe so. I believe so. Let me double check on that.
Yeah, why don't you double check on that? I'm shocked.
Where's Jamie when you need him?
Yeah, pull this up, Jamie.
Directed by I'm wrong. Written by David Chase. Directed by okay. So regardless, I didn't have high hopes. Trailer didn't do anything for me, and then I went in and I went to watch it with an open mind. I'm saying maybe it'll be fun, maybe it'll be okay. And I just felt like I spent the first hour of the film like waiting for something to happen, like waiting for it to get good, like waiting for something to be presented to me that I cared about. And it just didn't happen until maybe the last 20 minutes of the film that I actually started to be like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting and I kind of enjoy this a little bit. But the main plot points were totally forgettable to me. I don't even
they were miscast. They were miscast. And
then the other thing is, I basically so recently I was watching a Crazy White Boy Likes the Dead. You're in good company, Crazy White Boy. So recently I watched a video. I think it was a YouTube video of this channel. I can't remember it because it's been over a year. That does great what do you call it? Analyses of certain themes in The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And, stuff that I think has like a lot of credibility that I really enjoy and that I really buy into. And so this channel produced a video sort of in defense of Many Saints of Newark and sort of outlining what the audience got wrong. And while it was a very convincing defense of the movie, and I've yet to rewatch it with those points in mind, a good film, if it's a good film, I don't need to like read a defense on it and think, oh, that you're right, that was good. If it's a good film, I'm going to enjoy it. It's
no, you're wrong.
It's like
you're wrong.
Hesh said, if it's a hit, it's a hit, you know what I mean? Some things have a hit quality and some don't.
Things don't know. There's some things that are acquired tastes, and there are some things that require deeper analysis before they can be reviewed. A great example. I just rewatched my friend Bob Rose, who I podcast with on here sometimes. Shout out to Bob.
I've podcasted with him, I believe.
Oh, I think you did. Yeah. So Bob is a huge fan of Jaws. Bob has a screenplay podcast called Writer's Blockbuster, where they dissect blockbuster screenplays and just talk about the mechanics, and it's fascinating to me. It made me, what happens is I listen to the show and then I literally send Bob voice memos like saying whether I agree or disagree with what they're saying, and we go back and forth, and which launched me into watching Jaws, which I had seen 2 years ago, and before that hadn't seen in 15 years. And before that, I used to watch hundreds of times on like TBS or whatever. I grew up with Jaws. We all grew up with Jaws. I know Jaws, fairly well, but I've had to have seen Jaws like 100 times. I've seen it so many times. And yet here I am watching Jaws as an adult. I'm watching Jaws as an adult. I'm watching Jaws as a father. I'm watching Jaws as a filmmaker. And I see we just, him and I in back and forth in the Facebook messages, we deconstructed Quint and the Captain Ahab foreshadowing and just like all this stuff that is connected, his motivations, the superstition behind the life preservers, why he goes crazy, like what is he thinking? And it just elevated. Like these were things that had to be either explained to me or I had to analyze.
Yeah, I'll give you that. You're right, actually.
So I disagree with your notion. I'm not saying, listen, I know what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say is good shit is good shit, and you don't need something to tell you something is good shit. If your ears or your eyeballs like it, you're gonna like it. It's kind of like knowing whether what you're into sexually, whatever gets your dick hard, right? Bottom line, straight up. If it gets your dick hard, then you're into it. Good or bad, whatever that may be. it's like, if you're maybe you like
maybe it's even eating deviled eggs, like.
Right. Oh, did you see what I sent you, by the way?
No, I didn't.
I think it's either on Facebook or something. The point
speaking
being
of
is
deviled
maybe
eggs,
maybe you're a dendrophiliac. Maybe you're a dendrophiliac. You like fucking trees. It's like, if trees get your dick hard, that might not be the best thing, because that's got to chafe, unless you.
I mean, listen, if you're into collecting business cards, that gets you hard. Collect business cards.
The point being, whatever gets your dick hard gets your dick hard,
Yeah.
and so there is something to be said with that in as well. However, there are so many movies where a revisiting and a reassessment has drastically changed my point of view on a movie. I've looked at Wes Anderson's entire filmography, which I basically dismissed from the onset, and then rewatched them years later and was like, my God, this is one of the greatest fucking filmmakers of our fucking generation. So,
and you're right. Sometimes time, like, I think a good example is honestly like the ending of The Sopranos. At first,
everybody was fucking angry about it. Nice,
everyone was angry. I think there's still a lot of people who are angry about it.
Yeah. I'm very accepting of it. I appreciate it.
I love it. And you know what? I think if they had done anything really overt, people would have been more upset. You
needed an open-ended ambiguity in order to make it work.
Yes. Yeah. And is it ambiguous? Is it a nail in the coffin? At the end of the day, we don't really know. And that's kind of what's fun about it.
Well, it's presented ambiguously, but I think having rewatched the series with the subtitles on, great example of what we were just talking about. Watch any movie that you used to watch as a kid with the subtitles on, and I guarantee it will be a different fucking movie for you. There's so much shit you miss in dialogue you don't even realize. And I'll tell you something, rewatching The Sopranos, they set up perfectly. It's like they smack you in the face with it.
God,
they have
so many of these like Italian like terms that they say, like these little expressions.
Yeah, like what
that,
was
like I didn't know what the hell they were that they were saying. That like now with the option to watch it with
that's right. Like Marone.
Like, that's what he said. He said "state zit," and I'm like, I can look up what that means.
Right? No, you're absolutely right. So the point being that when Bobby and Tony are sitting in a boat talking, I never picked up on that the first time, and I was laughing.
Greenwood Lake in
right. But I was laughing because I'm going, why is this such a fucking point of debate? They literally, clear as day, inform us that you don't hear it when you get clipped and everything goes to black. They are literally setting us up for the end of the show. Yeah. I mean, it's so fucking blatantly obvious. It happens.
I don't think it's blatantly obvious. I think it's a very, very strong theory, but at the end of the day, we'll never know 100%.
We'll never know 100% unless David Chase specifically confirms it. And I think he kind of has in interviews.
He almost did. He, I think, referred to it by accident as the death scene.
It's too, well, here's the thing. It's too engineered. It's too greatly engineered for it to not be known. So there is an answer, and only David Chase and the writers can really give us that answer. However, I think it is, again, the Occam's razor of it all is very simply, they're sitting in a boat. Bobby out of nowhere says, oh yeah, it's like, everything goes black. You don't even hear it when you get clipped. Boom.
And isn't there a flashback to that dialogue at some point later in
there might be. To be honest, to talk real quick, and we got to wrap this up. This went way longer than we intended. I just want to say the show ends up being rather anticlimactic. Like it's there's no, they get into this war.
And then they just end it. They run over his head, and then boom, it's it. That's it.
Right, and that, which is a great scene. It's like the Phil Leotaro's death scene.
Say bye, Grandpa. Say bye.
It's just so macabre. It's so macabre and hilarious all at the same time. Yeah.
not grandpa.
And ultimately, but it's very anticlimactic in his death, and then all of a sudden it's the end, and that's it. And then we wrap back around to the members jacket, where it is believed that the person who commits this hit on Tony is the relation of the guy who unalived himself at the beginning when he could not leave the life, and this was retribution. Meadow, who we haven't mentioned once, Meadow ends up getting married to one of Tony's what's his face?
Engaged.
Patsy's kid, right?
Yeah,
isn't it
Patsy?
Patsy?
Like an investment banker or a doctor.
Yeah.
He's like a
Finn did not work out.
Finn didn't work out. AJ, despite all his, he has this moment of clarity after the catalytic converter sets the car on fire. And he's like, well, it's using up too much gas. And then he gets a BMW. And it's just like, he's just a walking contradiction. And what ends up happening, he gets a job. He gets the easy street job hooked up by his dad, which is what he was always destined for. And probably the only thing he's ever capable of.
And that's literally AJ is a very low functioning human being. He is. He's capable. He is capable of applying himself. And the irony is,
and I always identified with him about that. Like he's
really,
like, when watching that show, like, when it first ended and I was watching it on the Netflix DVDs by mail, and I was like working in a pizza place, living at my mom's place.
Right. He worked at the pizza place too.
Yeah. And I'm like watching it. I'm like, oh my God, like seeing myself in him. And
but here's the thing about AJ
at all.
His life starts to turn around when he meets Blanca. But the other thing that we didn't mention is he's actually working his ass off in the construction. He's doing it. He turns it around, and he's like legitimately just like busting his ass, working hard, making an honest buck. And then he meets the girl. And I mean, AJ fires on all cylinders. So it's like, he is capable, but ultimately, yes, AJ finds himself in some cushy job. And like as a D-bag, just a D-bag of a guy.
Yeah, and then we have
everybody else dies. Paulie,
Tony goes and screws one of Chris's mistresses out in Vegas.
Right? Oh yeah, that's right. And they do peyote, and let's end it here where, the final shot with Paulie, I think, is a really, if Tony did not die, and it really is just like the end of, just like we're closing the chapter on Tony Soprano. Paulie is the one who ultimately is the ultimate survivor. He survived Colombo gangs in the 70s. He used to work with Tony's dad, and now here he is. He almost got clipped. At the beginning of season 6, I think it was.
What about Patsy Parisi? Patsy Parisi was on his way out in season 3.
That's true.
You remember he's showing up drunk.
Yeah, he wants to kill Tony,
his twin brother, and here he is seasons later, and he's still living, man.
Yeah, but you want to know something? It doesn't compare to Paulie. Paulie is the survivor. And ultimately, it's Paulie's given a promotion, and we leave him in front of the pork store, trying to get his tan on, and it's just the perfect way.
Yeah,
it's just the perfect way to leave Paulie. It's not the last time we see Tony; it's the last time we see Paulie. And there's that cat. That cat is following him around and whatnot. And
a lot of theories about that being.
Yes, I've heard.
I don't care, but maybe.
I think it's. I don't really buy into that, and I mean that's really it. Is there a chance that would you want to see? Would you want to flash forward 20 years and AJ has taken over for his father, and we're seeing a peek into AJ's life as a Tony Soprano mob boss?
I'd check it out. I'd watch it.
It would be. Would it be interesting if all of a sudden we jump over a decade and some change, and AJ goes from being, the D-bag with the BMW picking up scripts at a production house to literally being his father, like the mob boss father, and seeing that transformation?
I'd rather see a prequel series of.
You just said how you don't want. To have
Janice in Seattle as Pravati, and
yes.
and Hal turning into Harpo, and her whole fucking vibe out in Seattle on the West Coast. And being like a comedy. I would absolutely watch that. But I actually just read here. Apparently, they found out definitively what happens at the end of the series.
Okay,
and is that Noah Tannenbaum actually finally punched his fucking lights out. And that's why it went black, is because Noah Tannenbaum punched his lights out, just like he threatened to do in season 3.
Who's Noah Tannenbaum again? I'm confused.
You know, Jamal Ginsburg, the Hasidic homeboy.
Okay, and what
Noah Tannenbaum? Oh, come on, man.
Is
Don't
this
make me explain my joke.
Okay, it was a joke. It was a joke. Yeah,
right.
it was. I did not get the joke.
All right, Noah Tannenbaum was the
writer.
No, he was the mixed race boyfriend of.
Oh, fuck! I hate that guy.
You remember? And you know, Tony says some horrendous shit.
Yeah, he did. He said some terrible things.
And Noah goes, "He's lucky I didn't punch his lights out."
Oh, right. Yes, he did.
And Noah fucking Tannenbaum was ever gonna fucking punch Tony's lights out. And so there's a joke, there's a meme out there on the internet saying that that's why we saw it cut to black, because Noah punched his lights out. Yeah.
I want to thank. I really want to thank Jeremy Spicy for coming back and finishing the Sopranos. I will probably stitch all of these episodes together into one long mega episode that anybody can watch at their leisure. And I will be back. We'll be back with more. We got more shows coming up, and hopefully I can twist Jeremy's arm and get him to do Family Matters and finish Family Matters with me, because I haven't watched it since we watched the show. I'm dying to finish.
I want to proposition something to you in front of your audience.
Okay.
Now, if you do, in fact, do the 31 days of Halloween, is that what you call it?
I do. I've been doing 31 days of Halloween every year for 10 years. And in the last 3 of those years, or 2 of those years, instead of doing reviews on Facebook posts, I decided to just do them on my YouTube channel. So I do a review for every movie that I watch.
What I'm listening you for is, listen, I know that out of frame right now, you have a ton of really excellent VHS movies.
This is true.
If you're interested in it, I have, I hate calling it retro or vintage, but the reality is that it's 2023, and a VCR and a CRT TV with the 4:3 aspect ratio is, it's retro at this point. But I have the full setup.
All right, fuck it, let's do it.
You want to, if on any of those 31 days you want to come over here and view on VHS one of these films.
Yeah. No, I'll take you up on that. I'll take you up on that because I just watched the Land Before Time on my little all-in-one VCR Panasonic little mono 13-inch. Do you know I haven't watched a VHS in, I can't even tell you the last time I saw something on VHS. So I'll do it. I'll pick a movie or two.
Awesome.
And I will add that to my review. In fact, we'll finish up the session. They're short. They're only like 10-minute reviews. It's not like a full show.
There's so much more to unpack in The Sopranos versus, fucking.
This is true. Although sometimes I get really carried away. You have to see, if you haven't seen it yet, watch See No Evil. Holy shit.
Yeah. Oh, my! You have a copy of Killer Clowns from?
I do.
That's very sought after. I don't know if you know.
Which one? The Blu-ray or the?
Oh no, the VHS.
DVD? Oh, I don't have it on VHS.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a lot of people's grail, apparently.
I know. I do know that, and I do have some rare boxes back there.
I wish I still had the Max VHS tape.
That's how I watched the Max. It was on your.
I had that since like 1999, and I think it's.
What about Outside Out? We got to watch.
I have that on DVD. I don't have the VHS anymore. I have Max Chin's DVD copy. because I showed
Are
him.
we gonna hold on a second? Are we going to? We also. I thought we were gonna revisit the Forbidden Zone because it's been over a decade.
Any day, anytime, any place. Absolutely.
We'll go to your place. We'll watch it at your place. All right. All right. I really got to end this. I want to thank Jeremy so much. Peace, hair grease. We will see you next time. Again, make sure you subscribe. Leave a skull for me down in the comments. I want all your skulls, everybody. Jeremy, hold on one second.